there's like, I'm here. Stephanie's here. And, Don, you know, there's just three of us here as far as I know.
Yep.
John Sadie is here.
Yeah.
I have Efren Rodriguez here, James Burke, Stephanie Brown,
Walt Williams.
Riona Dice, Walt Williams.
So we have, let's see, Stephanie Brown, Walt Williams, and Don Macrino that are on the finance committee.
Yeah, it's the finance committee. So those are you're looking for, Mr. Williams.
Keith Turner has signed on, Walt, I believe.
All right. Okay.
Yep, sorry about that.
That's okay. Let's see. I can call this to order if that's what you like at this point in time. Take the roll. We have 4 people here, correct?
Don Macrino's present.
Yes. I'm present. Stephanie's present. And Keith with us.
Yep.
Keith's with us. There we go. So we have enough for quorum. The next on the agenda would be approval of the minutes from February 10th, 2020. Do I have a pardon?
So moved by Don Macrino.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving?
Aye.
Aye.
Somebody taking the minutes right now?
I'm sure there is somebody is there somebody taking minutes here?
Not aye.
Walt, the host should be recording the meeting.
I'm taking the minutes in case no one's recording. This Donna Reinhardt.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate that.
This is Director McBride.
It is being recorded.
Can you hear
and
me?
It's also being streamed on YouTube.
Good. Let's see. This is now the citizen participation time.
Did you roll in the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, Connie Fields has also joined the meeting, so you now have a full board.
Good. Thank you very much. So the finance director's update. Citizen participation.
Citizens, you want to talk?
Is there, would you like to, for the sake of continuing, could we get back to number 3 on the list, which would be citizen participation, and take a look at the finance director's update? Would that be possible?
Walt, I suggest we follow the agenda. Let's give citizen participation a moment. If there's no one who wants to participate, then let's just move on with the agenda.
Is there a second for that?
I second.
Okay. Good move.
How long should you give them?
That's an interesting question.
This is Director McBride. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, thank you. I was having some difficulty, so I apologize. Are we on to number 4, Director's update?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I apologize.
Ask them how long you think, yeah. The citizens.
I gotta go over some email.
But before I go, I want to
Wait,
ask.
whoa.
Oh, hello?
Walter, is there someone who's going to comment, or are we finished with that part?
Well, I haven't heard anything from any citizens that are out there.
Okay,
If
then
there are out there,
I think we're ready to move on to the next number.
we can move along to number 4, which is the finance director's update. All righty. All those in favor of doing that? Give me an aye.
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 Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Finance director.
Dave, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. My audio is on the computer and my video is here. So, okay, thank you all for this meeting, for being present. I'm going to start with the director's update. The first order of business, I'm going to review the mayor's recommended budget presented to council. I'm going to share my screen with you.
Mhm.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to quickly go through this presentation. I'm going to follow the same format that was presented to the council. I'm going to go over a few things. First, go over the presentation to the city council, and I'm going to move on to the salary, tax, and benefit analysis, some information on general fund policy, and some of the other policies. I will try to do this expedient to cover some of the items that we have on the agenda at a later time. The agenda is to cover the revenues and expenses of the city, show historically how the city has done. Then I'm going to go over to the fund balance and discuss that. I'm going to give a summary of the mayor's recommended budget. I'm going to touch upon the mill rate calculation, the proposed mill rate and the property tax impact, discuss various pieces of the revenues, discuss various pieces of the expenditures, and then I'll summarize and get into some of the other matters. Most importantly, I wanted to show the last 6 years financial performance has been very strong for the city, as this chart indicates. Revenues have outpaced expenditures from 2.6% growth or 1.8% growth. What this has resulted into is a general fund balance that's been exceptionally strong over the past few years. We are currently at 16% of operating fund balance. And as you may recall, the fund balance policy, as stated previously and enacted previously by the council, was supposed to be 10.3%. So overall, a very strong financial position. The mayor's recommended budget, as presented to the council, was 94.9. Mayor's budget was 94.9 million of revenues, 94.9 million of expenditures. 60% of the revenue was taxes, 33% was intergovernmental revenues. The bulk of the expenses were the personnel and fringe benefits. 30.5 million, or 32% of the expenditures, are relating to salary, tax, and benefits. The city and school construction, 6.8 million for debt service. Education of 44.2 million, and other expenditures of 5.8, which consists of their pension, your workers' comp, and your liabilities. This slide is a summary of how we determine the mill rate calculation. It's a new slide we entered into this year just to show everyone how we come up with the mill rate. Down here is the proposed mill rate. We take the city general fund budget, then we add into the Board of Education fund it to find out what the total 94.9 million is needed to develop the budget. We then move forward and we subtract out some of these other funds that are non-taxable funds that are not needed. That total is 38.6 million to arrive at the 56.3 million, which is the current levy of the amount of the taxes that need to be raised. There's some other smaller amounts that are money that comes in that we also add to that total to arrive at the 56.4 million, which is your tax warrant, which is the amount of funds that you will need to raise through taxes. We divide that by the taxable grand list of almost 1.5 million to arrive at the 37.86 mill rate. That's assuming 100% collection. Obviously, we don't collect 100%, so we've determined 38.19 was the tax rate we're forecasting for next year.
David,
What that means?
David, this is the mayor. Let me interrupt you for a
Yes.
minute. The slides on the main screen are not changing. So you're going through the slides, but we're still slide.
Thank you, Thank you, Mayor Passero. I knew that the slides weren't moving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, let me,
All right.
okay, I'm gonna try to X out of this and I'll bring it up on another screen.
Yeah, Dave, if you just hit view in the top tab, you should be able to start the slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow, and then it'll present for which page you want to be on.
How do I get the volume up?
Is that showing up
There
currently?
you go. Yep.
Yes.
There you
Okay.
go. Just pick up where you left off, David.
All right, this is the second slide, so I'm gonna have to go. Can you see this slide currently?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the slide where we were at. I just performed the mill rate calculation, quickly summarized, and now we're at the proposed mill rate and the property tax impact. In a nutshell, all the taxes are estimated to decrease this year as a result of the decreased mill rate. 1.71 decrease, which is almost a 4.5% decrease in the mill rate. Revenues we'll touch upon quickly. I have several screens here, so it's a little bit of a issue here. All right, so budgeted revenue sources. The bulk of this is the 60% from your real estate taxes, 33% from your intergovernmental revenues, 3.8% for charges for services. This is your total of your revenues of 94.9, primarily consisting of your taxes and your intergovernmental revenues. The next slide shows the new London grand list growth.
David, if the slide was supposed to change, it hasn't changed again.
It hasn't changed.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave, if you just click on the squares on the left, then it'll pop up.
Are you seeing
Seeing the council approved
budgeted
budget.
revenue?
Yeah. No, we're still seeing the council approve budgets.
I apologize for this. I've not had this issue in the past.
You just have to click on the slide you want to go to from the left and it'll pop in.
Yeah, that's the screen that we're looking at, but he's looking at a different screen.
He's not looking at the PowerPoint screen.
We're
As it
on
appears-
page 3, David. We're on page 3.
Citizens participation? No, never mind, excuse me.
Is the slideshow moving now?
No.
No.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to reshare because something's. Okay, so
Move on and
I'm going to
come
try
back.
this again. Okay. Do you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Grand list growth.
All right, so that's the grand list growth. Apologize for this issue. Grand list growth rate. The summary of this slide is showing grand list growth over the past few years, averaging 3.6%, which is significant growth. Did the slide change?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, this slide shows the municipal grand list growth of New London compared to some of the other municipalities. Again, the 3.6% growth, significantly stronger than some of the other comparable municipalities in the region. The slide change?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so we're working. Next slide is intergovernmental revenues. The bulk of it here is just to show you where all the revenue sources are coming from. The bulk of it's obviously ECS funding part of the school of 22.4 million. The Pequot Fund of 1.6 million is another strong component, and the college and hospitals of 4.6. This slide, although a little messy, it's the same slide we had last year, which really just trying to show over time, historical state aid has been decreasing. So it's just an important facet to know as we prepare budgets going forward. The slide is continuing downward, with maybe the exception of the ECS funds. The next slide is the charges for services. That's just kind of giving you a flavor of charges for services at 3.7 million, which represents 30-something% of the budget, where those funds are coming from. The bulk of it's coming from ambulatory revenue, about 1.6 million. That department's about a $2 million budget, so the bulk of that department is made up from the revenues. Some of the other sources of services that we receive, the water, WPCA, private hauler fees, stormwater, just gives you a good flavor of where the revenues are coming from. Next is expenditures. Again, the expenditure growth, as noted earlier, this is for your 200, 230, or 240 employees of the city. 80% of your costs for city operating are personnel and fringe benefits. And these some of the other components in summary is your city debt service, 4.4, the 1.9 of workers' comp, and LAP insurance and so forth. Retiree benefits, a pretty big number there at 1.7 million. That's some of your retirees and your retiree health and life insurance benefits. The pension, that's your ADEC, your employer determined cost that we need to fund every year. The total city, which comprises 51% of the budget, is 48.2. The total education, including the educational debt service for the construction, is 46.6. That's 49%. So again, this is the total budget request of 94.9. These are the various appropriations that were submitted to council. As you can see, the bulk of it is your personnel, your education operating costs, represent 47%. Next up is the personnel cost, including with fringe benefits, you're at the 32% of total cost. Your operating costs are much lower. These are some of the other components. This is a departmental by department appropriation that was provided. Shows the difference year over year for each of the departments of the city. The largest increase was in the police department of a $700,000 increase. However, the bulk of that was for increases in healthcare and salary. Next up with education, increased $639,000. Public works also had an increase of $480,000, primarily payroll, but there were some additional costs in the public works department for additional maintenance and supplies and some increase in waste fees expected. Fire had an increase of $320,000, primarily salary and healthcare, non-controllable. ODP had an increase of $225,000. However, $100,000 of that was for an increase in healthcare because there was a budget error last year that it was not in the budget. So this was not a real increase. The true increase was in the marketing and the advertising budget of about $50,000. Finance had a reduction of $227,000, primarily due to 2 positions not being filled this year. We're, as you know, we're undergoing the Munis implementation. We had in the budget an accountant position and an IT position. We have taken those positions out, and therefore that's a result of that decrease. Interfund transfer decrease, mainly as a result of the decrease in contribution and debt service, as a result of paying down some bond funds, as well as some decreased interest costs and some refinancing, as well as using some of the interfund transfers that have been built up in that fund over the past few years. This slide I showed you last year. This is the historical education for education. Their budget over time, how that budget has been, how the appropriations have been formed by taxpayer support. The end story is that over time, the average has been 2.9% increase from a taxpayer support over the last 6 or 7 years. This year, and this shows the education as well. The point to note here is the mayor's recommended support for education was 3.0%, slightly higher than the average over the last 6 years. The next slide shows how we determined the mayor's recommended education budget. And I believe everyone has gone through this last year and sent out several memos describing it. So I won't spend a great deal of time explaining it. But at the end of the day, what this slide shows is that we can't just look at the educational budget request from year to year. We need to look at the taxpayer support, because if the taxpayer support does not increase, or the ECS does not increase, then the taxpayer support increases. So although the actual budget increase in education, the fiscal 21 educational budget request was stated as, I believe it was 2%, the actual increase in taxpayer support is 5.8%, because the ECS revenue that is being received is the same amount as last year. I'll touch upon that later as well. This formula over here shows that the actual budget that was recommended by the mayor was $639,000, 3%, which again is greater than the 2.9% that has historically been the increase in education. So in summary, the presentation that was provided to the council recommended a $94.9 million city budget, increase of 1.3 or almost a 1.5%, fairly distributed between the city government and the educational budget at 1.5. Now I'm going to refer back to the agenda. That was the final financial presentation of the city. Just want to touch upon a few other items that were in the agenda.
Sure,
I'm
go
going
ahead.
to try to do this again. All right, I stopped sharing. I'm going to X out of this. One thing, let me share my screen. All right, can you see this screen?
Yeah.
No,
The salaries?
nothing has come up. You haven't shared your screen.
Okay. How about now?
There you go.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so I just wanted to include this in the presentation to make sure everyone's aware that we provide a detailed listing of every single salary position by department throughout the city. We did not do this in the initial budget, this much detail. The council had numerous questions in terms of how the salary tax and benefits were determined. So we did come up with this grid, and this grid not only lists every single individual employee and their department, it also lists all the way, if you see off the top, and this is also online and on the web and in your packages, it goes through all the payroll, the overtime, the medical coverage, the dental coverage, life insurance, ADD, all the pension costs, any other defined benefit costs, uniform expenses, eyeglasses, any costs involved to arrive at a departmental budget. So there is a great length of detail that we put in the budget to make sure you had full transparency and aware of every single salary position. The next up is I just wanted to make everyone aware of the general fund balance policy. We'll be talking about that. As you recall, this fund balance policy was stated several years ago. We'll touch upon that in a second. The end goal, getting to the 16.67% balance. So I'm going to see if I can switch. Okay, I'm going to share this screen. Can everyone see this screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So the purpose of this is to show the fund balance policy that I just put forth. As you recall, it started at 8.3. It's supposed to increase to 9.3, to 10.3, to 11.3. What this analysis shows is where we're at currently at 6/30/19. As I indicated earlier, with 15 million in fund balance required per policy. So we have an excess fund balance. However, if you go forward over the next couple of years, it's important to note that this fund balance policy increases 1% a year to get to that 16.67%. And I'm pointing that out because as you see here in the future, if you assume certain things such as fund balance, this D here assumes a 1 million additional. And then we also put in some capital reserve funds, which we've been doing. And now that we have the Board of Ed appropriation possibility as well, of 2%, I believe it is, of the budget, we do run the risk of going down to 3.9% over 3.3 and adding in the Board of Ed potential ramifications. It slowly does get to a potential for a negative fund balance. So we just want to be aware. This has a lot of assumptions embedded in it. We just wanted to point out that we're making good strides. However, it is important to make sure we need to continue to raise the fund balance up because this is for year 6. As of year 8, we will need to retain to get to that 16.67%. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Yep.
In addition to the general fund balance policy, we also have the capital reserve fund balance policy. And let me just see if I can bring that up. So we also have the capital reserve fund balance policy, which was put forth last year, approved by council. Just so everybody's aware, we did take $1.8 million designated the capital fund balance policy. It has been utilized for these items. We have projected $1 million currently in that fund balance policy. It will slowly go down and we'll be using that going forward. So I just want to make you aware of that policy because that does affect the fund balance as time goes on.
Questions?
The last item on this is
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, last item is we have the capital non-recurring fund balance policy, which, as you recall, was approved by the council. This was to set aside leftover funds for the Board of Ed. This year they utilized it. I think they had an excess budget of $31,000. So they are able to set aside 2% of their fund balance policy at the end of the year, which again will decrease the level of items into the fund balance policy of the city if this is utilized. So that's the first part of my presentation. And I'll go into some additional details on a separate presentation, but happy to answer any questions now.
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. I have a question. Let's see, at the last city council meeting, the city council, I understand, appropriated a certain amount of money to go to the Board of Education. And my understanding then is that that's going to affect our bond rating eventually. We're going to be absorbing the cost to the city and to that fund that we've tried to set up for a very, very long period of time. So could you address that issue again, please?
Yeah, I certainly will. If it's okay, Chair, I do have about 5 or 6 more slides that I'd like to present. It may tell a full picture and may answer some of that question that you had as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can everyone see this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so these are the items I've just gone over, the agenda items from the presentation of the council. The next up is to review the council approved budget for fiscal 21. This incorporates some of the changes, Chair, that you're referring to. The current budget as it stands right now, in summary, the city budgeted expenses is 1.1%, which is a $561,000 increase over last year's budget. The education budget, after some of the changes that were incurred, has a educational budget expense increase of $814,000, which is a 1.9% increase over fiscal 2020. In addition to that, this taxpayer support number as a result of this $814,000 is 3.9% increase. And again, as indicated earlier, the primary reason for that is ECS grant money stayed the same for fiscal 20 to 21, and therefore any and all increase to the educational budget is borne by the taxpayer. So although the budget's going up 1.9%, taxpayer support is going up 3.9%. This slide I wanted to bring forward. I think it's important. You're seeing a lot in the newspapers now about changes in the impacts of the COVID pandemic. The purpose of this slide is to show the budget development over time and to review the process and how it's evolved over the last 4 months. And I just think it's important everybody is aware of this as they make decisions. In February, primarily oversees the COVID impact, the Finance Department developed its preliminary budget. The final financial impacts were still known at that time. That's when the Board of Education passed its fiscal 2021 budget. March of 17, state of Connecticut closed down. Finance at that point decreased its budget based upon unknown impacts to COVID. I think about $200,000 decrease. In April, financial stress, as you know, began to mount. Finance provided the mayor's budget to council April 1st. After this time, other municipalities began to decrease their budgets and their mill rates. And as a result, at April 29th, we recommended to the council to reduce the budgeted revenues of $185,000 from some of the cost savings that were found, and as a result of expected decreases in future revenue streams, which I'll talk about in a minute. In May, as you're seeing now, municipalities are continuing to decrease their budgets and their mill rates, and here we are now at the budget meeting. So the purpose of this is over the last 4 months, there's been a lot of changes, and every day we get more and more information, and we are seeing that our revenue streams are decreasing. So just want to make sure we're making good decisions as we're aware of more and more information. This slide provides an update on how others believe COVID-19 is impacting us in their areas and what municipalities are doing about it. If you look here, this was the article that was presented in the day this past Saturday. And in summary, it's just showing that the resulting financial issues are very large. They should be taken seriously. It spells out right in the article, municipal aid will suffer as a result of this. So it's important we take this into consideration. To the right side of this, I gave some examples of what similar municipalities are doing in the region as they go through this month or two process and know more and more. Stonington had no increase in the mill rate. They decreased their school budget by $500,000. Interestingly enough, they established a fund which can be used if the state is able to provide budgeted revenue streams. That's something I'd like to talk to the council about in the future. It's kind of a safeguard stabilization fund where if city revenues do not come to fruition, they can use that fund to offset some of the revenues that are not coming. Oline reduced their budget through this process by $370,000, 1.06 lower than the current spending plan. Eastline reduced their Board of Ed budget $860,000. The general government, they reduced by over $300,000. The Waterford initial budget was 2.1. They decreased their budget 1.25 increase. However, the taxes will be the same. Groton City, next year's spending plan is 1.5 million less than the current, and the mill rate will stay the same and no tax increase. Norwich, the current budget will increase the mill rate 1.9%. So the summary of this is that financing boards, as they're going through this budget approval process, are reducing their budget since they are getting more information about the financial ramifications. This slide is an additional slide to show that the potential financial ramifications from the COVID pandemic. What we did a little analysis here. This here shows the impact from the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Slot contributions back then from the two casinos to the state of Connecticut were down $33.6 million. That same time or the next year, which is what how the state budgets accordingly, the slot revenue, the slot revenue contribution from the two tribes or from the state via the slot revenue was decreased 1.1 million. So that just goes to show you that if the casinos decreasing slots, there is going to be an effect on municipalities. The slide to the right, I did a little bit more analysis and dug into the really recent revenues. This shows the last 3 months of activity at the two casinos, the level of decrease in their slot payments, and what that may have effects to New London. The total estimated decrease for these 3 months, and this assumes May only at 50% of last year's May, which, as we know, that's probably not going to be the case. Its estimated decreases of slot revenue to the state is $44.5 million. Based upon recent data, the state pays out 20% of this to all the municipalities. New London receives 3.24% of this. If you go through the math and do that and follow the same footsteps, it looks like we will have at least a $300,000 decrease in that $1.7 million number from the state. So again, all estimates based upon certain items, but we do think it's based upon all the evidence, it's probably certain that that will happen. This slide is probably the most critical slide to show what the impact will be as a result of this crisis. The financial crisis of 2008 had financial impacts to the city. We can do the analysis on them and see those changes. Building permits and other permits were down 53% and 26% in the following year from the crisis. Investment income was down 65%. Police private protection was down 14%. Solid waste was down 16%. So in a nutshell, there was $800,000 of lost revenue the following year after the financial crisis. And we believe this crisis is having the same effect, if not greater. Here's the projected impact on the city revenues that we developed. Here is the fiscal 2009 decreases that we just laid out. This was the original mayor's budget. This would be the projected decrease if we were to assume we would have the same decrease in revenues. We, in March, initially slashed, as I indicated, about $200,000 out of the budget when the outbreak first started because we knew there would be a decrease in investment income in trash haulers because we stopped that service. We then formulated the fiscal 21 mayor's budget. So the thought is, how much impact will these decreases have to the city's budget? If you assume these reductions are parallel to 2009 reductions, your impact would be $576,000. What we're recommending is that we take 76% of these estimated projections for revenues decreases is $440,000. And this is a summary of all the recommended budgets that we've had. This was the original budget, April 1st. This was the mayor's revised budget, April 28th or 29th. This was the city council approved budget, April 29th. Just let me back up here. The mayor's budget, April 1st. The mayor's revised budget, April 29th, had a reduction of $182,000, as I mentioned, from the initial budget we had internally. The council approved budget, this mayor's revised budget we put forth, we decreased $182,000 from that budgeted savings. The council, then we went to the council and council approved allocating $175,000 of those savings into the budget and did not reduce the revenue streams. This was the council approved budget of April 29th. After the research we've been doing and the analysis on decreased revenue streams, we're recommending a new budget of $94.4 million, which is the decrease of the $440,000 from the council approved budget on April 29th. This would be a reflection of the revised revenue streams that we expect to be decreased. We also, as a municipality, as you know, we need to balance the budgets, and therefore we need to make reductions in operating expenses when we expect to see reductions in revenue streams. We need to make up this $444,000. This $444,000 could be made up by applying a 1% increase over the general government budget from fiscal 2020 and a 1% increase over the educational budget from 2020. To arrive at an overall increase of a fiscal 2021 budget of 1% or $935,516. We believe that's fair and equitable, and it's taken into consideration both sides of the house, making sure it's fair and making sure we are realistic on our revenue estimates. The recommended revised budget, the recommendation is to have the city and the Board of Ed make the changes as needed throughout their departmental budgets based upon the funds that are approved. The city government budgets at the departmental level, and as such, the administration will be required to present revised departmental appropriations to the council if a revised general fund appropriation is approved by the Board of Finance. One thing I wanted to point out is these recommended changes do not change the proposed mill rate. It will remain at the recommended 38.19, which was presented in the mayor's budget, which is still a decrease of 4.48% to city taxpayers. These changes are meant to offset the anticipated decrease in revenues as expected from the pandemic. If these revenue reductions are not made and the budgeted revenues are not received next year, the city will need to generate those funds elsewhere. There's only a few ways we can do that, and that would be by utilizing fund balance and or reducing costs in other areas of the current year's budget. Also want to point out that the city cannot modify the Board of Education budget once approved, even if the revenues do not meet the budgeted revenues. So if the ECS payments from the state are reduced as a result of these issues and they're not received, the city will need to generate funds elsewhere by utilizing its general fund balance and reduce the cost in the current year's governmental budget. So that is my presentation, Chair, and my recommendation.
Are there any comments? So the recommendation is for reducing that figure, which was what, 400 and what thousand from the proposed budget?
Yeah, the recommendation is to reduce the council-approved budget by $440,288, which reflects a 1% increase in the general government budget from fiscal 2020 and a 1% increase in the educational budget from fiscal 2020. So although it's a reduction in the council-approved budget for April 29th, it's a 1% increase for the fiscal 2020 budgets of both the city and the Board of Ed.
Okay. Does anyone have a discussion on this?
Walt, this is Don Macrino, and a question to Dave, if I may. Dave, what is your sense of whether we might get that ECS money or not? I know it's difficult to predict, but what's it looking like?
Yeah, our expectation and hope is that we receive it. I haven't received any indication that it is not coming, but I think it's so early to tell. I mean, it's possible the mayor may have better information than I do on that, but I have not heard we're not. But I know in years past, I think 7 or 8 years ago, the ECS payment was reduced and it caused havoc to the city, is my understanding.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address that, there is general consensus, bipartisan consensus, that the state is now running over a $2 billion budget for the next fiscal year. So that is the concern. They have a $2 billion shortfall in the second year of this biennial budget. And that is certainly going to affect our state revenues. It concerns me greatly. We did not have that. When we wrote this budget, the state had a $2.3 billion rainy day fund. That's expected to be used up by the end of the current fiscal year. So the whole state financial situation has changed in the matter of 2 months.
All right. We're, if I may, we're going into uncharted waters here. It took a long time to build up that contingency fund that we have now. And if we don't put some more money back into that fund, we could be in big trouble. The taxpayers' mill rates will go up, and there's just no way of predicting where we're going to be 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months down the road. We don't know. The other school systems, I mean, the other force, you know, the school systems and the government, say Ledyard, Groton, all the rest of them, East Lyme, have frozen. And I think that's the prudent thing to do at this point in time. Any questions? Any?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I get a printed version of the budget of the proposed? And I don't have that. And I didn't see an email where I could print it. It's Connie Fields.
Yeah.
This is Director McBride. We do have the budget books in the finance building for everyone to pick up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big book.
Yeah, it's very large.
There was a lot of reading.
Yeah, lots of details.
Oh yes, hey, it was well done.
But I mean, I don't have any objections. I just want to do a final review before. You know.
Are we looking for a motion at this point?
I think we are. Okay. we have, if I go down through the agenda, we have correspondence. I don't know. We have any correspondence concerning this?
We did finish.
Old business? Is there any old business? Nope. Next meetings will be held, and I think we need to take a vote on it. And somebody like to make a proposal that a motion that we eliminate, what was that figure you had? Put back into the
Yeah, the recommendation was to reduce the council-approved budget by $440,288 to approve a general government budget of $50,465,317, which represents a 1% increase from the fiscal 2020 budget. And for the educational budget, a number of $44,021,759, which also represents a 1% increase from the fiscal 2020 educational budget.
yeah.
So can I make a recommendation? Because nobody has the book except the chair,
What do you mean?
the actual book, the proposal, the proposed budget for 2021.
Well,
All of the information is online as well, and it's been online for three weeks or so since the April 1st.
Okay. So let me go print it.
well, we're gonna have
very-
to make a decision at right now, I believe.
Has anybody made a motion?
Has anybody made a motion to accept the proposal that's been proposed to us by the finance director, that we reduce that sum to, of what? What's the total? 488,000?
440,288.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept that reduction?
So moved. Don Macrino.
A second? Well, I'll second it. I mean, I don't see how we're going to be able to do anything unless we secure that money that we have already had, you know? We're going into terrible times here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'm tuning into this meeting part of the way through, but have you taken up the council's recommendation, or are you taking up the amendment proposed by the finance director at this time?
Well, I think it's the amendment proposed by the finance director to cut that. What's the council? The council passed.
I thought the parliamentary procedure would be to take up the main motion that was recommended by the council, and then you would have to make an amendment to it if you wanted to follow the finance director's recommendation to revise it. Is that correct?
Is that how that's understood, finance director?
Or the
My
mayor?
discussions with Attorney Londrigan, who I believe is on the line, if we need to refer to him, was the most important thing is to make sure that the Board of Finance makes a recommendation and proposes a motion and gets approval. How it gets to that process is up to the individuals involved on the board. But Attorney Londrigan, are you available?
Yes, I'm here, and I apologize. I don't have the agenda in front of me. But in looking at the charter, the Board of Finance makes a recommendation back to the City Council regarding the budget. Now, whether or not the motion I don't agree that the motion has to be amending whatever was sent to you. You received numbers, and if your motion is then to recommend something different from the numbers that you received, you simply make that motion, which I believe you've made and is seconded. So all you're looking for is making a recommendation of a number back to City Council.
So, okay. Want to take a vote based on that information that we just received from our
Well,
council?
just in
You have
Pardon?
to
terms
make
of-
the motion, right?
in terms of discussion, I want to clarify why I made the motion based on the information that we have. It seems as though the board, the council made a recommendation for the budget several weeks ago. We all understand that we're in, I don't think it's an overstatement to say, a catastrophic situation that continues to deteriorate. None of us has a crystal ball. But based on the recommendations given, it seems to me, at least from my perspective, to be reasonable that we simply have to tighten our belt from where we were a few weeks ago based on what has occurred. That was the purpose of my making the motion.
I second the motion.
Thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3.
Opposed?
Okay, opposed? Motion carries.
Move on.
Okay. So we will make the reduction of, what is that total?
400.
5 times apparently. 400.
440.
400, what?
440,288.
Okay, thank you very much. And apparently the motion passed. Thank you.
And that's all.
Chairman, this is Attorney Londrigan again. I just want to confirm with Director McBride that motion covers both the general, the recommendation on the general budget as well as the recommendation on the education budget. Is that correct?
Yes, the proposed motion was to reduce the total council approved budget by 440,288, which consists of two parts. The general government budget of 50,465,317 and the educational budget of 44,021,759. Both of those numbers reflecting a 1% increase from the fiscal 2020 budget.
Okay, so each budget will have just a 1% increase. Is that what you're saying, Director McBride?
That's correct. So maybe, yes, maybe it's best to do an individual motion for each of the government and the education to make it simply, to make it clear.
Yeah, I would do that.
Okay, don't we have to rescind the last motion that we just took? The vote on that?
Yeah.
No, this is Attorney Londrigan. I don't think you need to rescind it. You've made the motion to make those adjustments to the budget. I think now I would just make a motion on the recommendation of the general portion of the appropriation being whatever number Director McBride says it equates to, and then a second motion that you're making a recommendation on the Board of Education budget be a particular line or value that Director McBride gives to you.
Okay.
Okay, so let me present that to you once again.
Can he break them down for you?
Yep.
This is Director McBride. I did share the screen, so these would be the two numbers. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the two motions that equate,
See it?
these are the two
I can-
numbers that would equate to the total.
Okay. It's very, very difficult. Well, first we have to approve the budget. What are the numbers? My numbers here are extremely small.
All right, I can assist with this since
Yeah.
I have the numbers here. So
Right.
the first motion would be to move forward with the educational budget, fiscal 2021 budget of 44,021,759, which is a 1% increase from the fiscal 2020 approved budget.
Okay. All right, having heard that,
Hey, Dave, there's a question. I'm not sure if this counts as like a public question from Greg Smith asking if there's an equal amount being taken from each budget. I didn't know if that's a question that needs to be answered before we vote on the motion?
No, I don't think so.
No,
I
it's not.
think that we have to take that money, it's be coming out of the emergency fund that we have. So what you want to do and what you're proposing is to cut services back to the general public of the city. And that's already been done.
Right, and proposing to increase both budgets at 1% from last year's budget. So, fair and equitable to both sides.
Okay. And then wasn't just a real quick question. So when city council increased the Board of Ed budget by about 175,000, wasn't that due to an error of like extra expenditures for like 185,000?
Yeah, there was a combination of reduction in marketing and advertising for ODP. There was a reduction in IT, I think, in their technology and software, and there were numerous reductions in healthcare costs that in the initial mayor's budget for May 1st had some people, let's say, as an example, in a family plan. And after we further review and we detailed out that salary, tax, and benefit grid, we found out that a couple people should have been in the spousal plan, let's say. So that reduction between all of those items totaled up to be $182,000.
You're cutting from each one.
Okay, so that so then that your department would be, or we'd be, I guess just want to make sure we're doing that to count for revenue shortfalls, or is it? I guess
No, what we've done over time is that's kind of what I was trying to do with the presentation, was to show that as we got better and better and more information on the implications from this COVID situation, is we reduced revenue streams. And as a result of revenue streams, when we determined that we reduced IT and we reduced healthcare costs, we thought of it as an opportune time to also reduce expenses. And with the reduced revenues, as we had done in February prior to even submitting to the council, we reduced revenue streams at that point as well.
okay.
Dave, if you put that screen up, or I will just make a motion for the first side. I think that's the municipal side. Is that the motion we're waiting for?
Yes.
The 1% increase on the municipal side. I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Okay, and that number I believe is on your screen, $50,465,317 for the general government.
Right.
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
Call the vote, Walt?
Yep.
Was the motion seconded?
Second. I thought they said so moved.
Yep. Okay. Let's take the vote. Here we go. I vote for those recommended revised budget changes for the city council. Anybody else? Anybody gonna vote?
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Don Macrino, aye.
Okay.
Stephanie Brown.
And Connie
Yeah.
Fields, aye.
This is Director McBride. I believe we still need the motion for the Board of Ed.
I thought we were doing the motion separately, weren't we?
Yes, we've done the municipal side. Now we need to do the Board of Ed.
Ed.
But I only heard 3 ayes.
No, I said aye.
That's 4.
You said aye.
I said aye.
Yes, same here.
Okay, perfect.
Any nays?
Okay. They can't, that's it. There are 5 people that voted. All right, so it passes. Now, if you want to take a motion on the revised Board of Ed budget to the tune of, what are we cutting out of that? 440?
The budget for the total budget for the Board of Ed would be $44,021,759, a 1% increase from last year.
1% increase, that totals 44,358,59, correct?
$44,021,759.
I know, but the increase is 400,035,859, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The increase is 435,859.
All right, perfect. Did you make the motion? Hello,
No,
Chairman?
a motion has not been made yet.
The motion has not been made.
Thank you.
Someone like to make that motion? I'll make the motion. No, I'm the chair. Go ahead. Somebody else want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, second.
Second,
All right.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, Connie Fields.
Okay,
Reno, aye.
all right. And I said aye.
So that was a unanimous
Yeah,
support of the budget.
but now we have a vote to what? To cut that 400?
I think that's it.
That's
No.
it?
No,
Yeah.
I think that was all the votes that were needed to recommend to the council or put back to the council. I think that's
Okay,
3
you're
votes
right.
all necessary.
Yep,
Right.
thank you.
And Dave, maybe this is a question for Jeff, for Attorney Londrigan, but Board of Ed member Jeff Hart asked, he doesn't know how this can be considered, quote unquote, based on the Board of Education's request, unquote, per Section 85 of the Charter. I'm not sure what that pertains to, or what that is, but I wasn't sure if Attorney Londrigan does or David. It's in this-
This is Attorney Landrigan. I'm not 100% certain on what the question is asking per Charter Section 85, but I've reviewed that section and knowing historically the budgetary process, I don't see anything inappropriate with the motions that were made this afternoon.
Okay. I just saw it pop up, so I figured I'd bring it up.
Next on the agenda.
Okay. Is there any old business?
No.
No old business?
But can I make a suggestion that we get a copy of the education budget as well as the city budget? I know it's there and we can pick it up. Can we possibly get the education budget with it? I know that that was difficult last year to get.
Yeah, I will reach out to Rob Funk and request a copy of the Board of Ed budget for all the members.
Thank you.
You're
welcome.
All righty. Any old business? Hearing none. We have a listing of meetings for the zoning. No, for the budget here, but what I want to do at this point in time is simply adjourn the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A motion to adjourn, please. Yes. Do I have a second?
Thank you all.
That's it.
All set.
Alright.
All set.
Have a good night.
Good
You
night.
too.
Okay, thank you, everyone.